Hey, small groups, Pastor Jeff here. We're in week 7 of It's the End of the World as We Know It. Excited for us to dive into more conversation out of Pastor Josh's message this last weekend. But first, I want to tell you about my favorite childhood story. It's actually around my house, and so I had an opportunity not too long ago to grab it again and read it to my kids. And so we're going through the story, and the story kind of goes like this. It's about this moose named Toulouse, and he's a chocolate mousse. And so the problem with that is that wherever Toulouse steps, whatever he touches, he leaves this chocolate mess everywhere. And so I'm going in this story with my kids and just, having this sweet, this is my favorite childhood story. And now I'm sharing it with my kids, really sweet moment. But what happened is we got to the end of the story and it was incomplete. It had fallen apart so much over the last 30 some years that there was no ending to the story. And so my kids were kind of like, well, that was kind of a lame story. But we kind of built from there, and it was like, no, I promise you there's more to the story, but I couldn't remember what the story was at the end or how it all came to be because it had been so many years since I had read it. Thankfully, in the book of Revelation, that we aren't left with this cliffhanger that we don't know how it ends. What's really cool, and what you even heard this weekend, was the most important part of any story is a good ending, and the Bible doesn't disappoint. We've been through so much in Revelation, all these really confusing questions, these confusing scenes. We've had dragons, we've had beasts, we've had false prophets, we've had all this stuff, and maybe along the way you're like, where is this heading toward? Revelation 19 and 20, we get into it, and the skies break loose. We talk about victory, we talk about Jesus overcoming, and it's just this beautiful picture of what the end of the story looks like. I spent so many years in youth ministry, and whenever we'd go through Revelation, I'm like, it's going to get confusing, but I just want you to know this. In the end, God wins. In the end, God wins, and that's the picture that we were able to paint even this weekend. And so evil is overcome. Evil has ended. There's victory that Jesus has here at the end. And so what I really want to turn our conversation toward today is this question. Jesus overcomes evil in the end, but is it happening in your life today? Jesus overcomes evil in the end, but is it happening in your life today? The Bible actually calls God's people over and over to have this proper perspective of evil. And it wasn't just in the clouds, or it wasn't just this philosophical bad that was out there. It was evil that sometimes even happens in our own life. And the Bible says things like this. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5:22 says, reject every kind of evil. 2 Timothy 2:22 says, flee the evil desires, I love this, of your youth. Sometimes, even if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I'm not really a youth anymore, but we can actually go through our story and be like, man, I'm still hanging on to some stuff. I'm still hanging on to some habits or some thoughts that are not honoring to God, and they're still present in my life. And so I love 2 Timothy 2 that says, flee the evil desires of your youth and pursue righteousness. What is righteousness? It's being right in the eyes of the Lord. That's what the Bible calls us back to. And pursue righteousness and faith and love and peace along with all those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. And then I love this from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 7. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. Fear the Lord and shun evil. What do you think about when you hear the word shun? I hear about this I am pushing against this completely. I'm giving everything I have. I'm shutting the door. I'm pushing it away. That is not going to be a part of my life. That's what I think about with shun. And the Bible calls God's people to have that kind of reaction when it comes to evil. So Jesus overcomes evil in the end, but is it happening in your life today? As some of you maybe even think back on your own story, you think about chapters that were confusing. You think about chapters that you might not be even proud of, but you also see little victories, little triumphs, little mountaintop experiences along the way that I think are important too. But I think a good picture for all of us to have right now, even as you're listening to us, is that God is holding the pen of the next chapter in your story. And it's this really cool picture of what is he getting ready to write? Is he getting ready to write that you were okay with more and more things that didn't honor him? Or is he getting ready to write something that there was breakthrough happening in your life? There was greater righteousness and right standing with him happening in your life. And so this is actually an area that I want to talk about, or have you talk about in your groups. Unpack this a little more, that if Jesus overcomes evil in the end, how is it happening in my life today? What does that look like? What are some areas of your life? And I'm excited about this discussion because I think it'll take your group and your discussion a little deeper. Is that it's this opportunity just to share if there was an area for God to move into in your life. Is that money? Is it relationships? Is it thought life? Is it your attitude? Is it anger? What is that? If Jesus were to move in a powerful way in one way that you were in more right standing with him, what would that be? I'm so excited about you guys unpacking that more, and I think Jesus' fingerprints are all over that, and I think it'll really benefit your group in a big way. Be right in the eyes of the Lord. This is what the Bible says, as being right in the eyes of the Lord and shun evil. Well, Toulouse the chocolate mousse, he actually uncovered his life purpose. Actually, I had to look it up online to get the complete end of the story. Toulouse actually figures out that him dropping all these chocolate droplets everywhere and leaving footprints everywhere was actually kind of his superpower a little bit. That he was able to make cookies in a sweeter way. He was able to make chocolate mousse, which is kind of fun. He was able to do all these things, and he found his life purpose, and he discovered that. But without the end of the story, it's really hard and leaves us kind of incomplete. It's really hard to kind of know where everything's headed. I love Revelation 19 and 20, that it gives us a picture of where all this is headed and actually what it means for you as a disciple of Jesus. Shun evil, pursue righteousness. I'm really excited about your discussion as you continue to dive into that as a group. Go all in on this discussion. I think it'll be really good. Jesus calls you to pursue righteousness. So let's get after that. Thanks so much for joining us for this just opportunity just to lob up this discussion to you. Do not miss next week as we talk more about heaven as Pastor Josh unpacks that. It's going to be good. Don't miss it. We'll see you this weekend.